thank you for joining the Northern Miner at the annual PDAC convention in Toronto. I'm pleased to be joined by New Zealand's Minister of Resources, Shane Jones. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Minister, given that you spearheaded New Zealand's Fasttrack consenting legislation, tell me, how does it balance rapid approvals with protecting the environment and indigenous rights?
Yeah, well, obviously New Zealand has a proud tradition of the clean green image. We also are a relatively new government. I came into power late 2023, and the Fasttrack one-stop shop legislation was seen as the best way for us to reinvigorate the economy. There'll always be guardrails, but our government's not going to tolerate the weaponisation of the environment, the weaponisation of wildlife. It's one of a host of factors that needs to be considered, and the Fasttrack legislation will give such matters status, but it doesn't hide the fact that the overarching purpose of this Fasttrack one-stop shop is economic development.
All right. I want to just take a step back and ask you, Minister, please give us a brief overview of what mining and the resource potential in New Zealand looks like.
So US dollars, the scale of our economy is probably 265 billion US, so a relatively small OECD economy. The major export is from our dairy industry. And after China and the US, Australia is our main partner. So what we have now in our mining sector for in terms of exports is some oil, a growing percentage of gold, coal, and a raft of rare earth minerals.
All right, thank you very much for that, Minister. Now, you also played a pivotal role in crafting New Zealand's new minerals strategy and the critical minerals list. How will you plan to drive growth while safeguarding those Maori rights and interests under the Treaty of Waitangi?
Yes, so New Zealand, like a host of old British colonies, was formed through a treaty with the indigenous tribes. The native tribes, the language of the Maori tribes, very similar to the other Pacific Islands. And as time has gone on, the dimension of Maori identity and Maori rights is firmly embedded in our political narrative and our economic narrative. And those matters have status. So any mining consent that is allocated has to take account of a range of interests, not the least of which are property rights, and also areas that may be regarded as sacred sites. But all of this has to be into a broad mix. And we don't want in New Zealand a situation where certain elements of the environment are used to hijack development. We've come from a period of time of political illiberalism in New Zealand, where, like a lot of other OECD countries, we've struggled to create a good infrastructure in terms of consent processes that don't get bogged down in incessant litigation. So that really has been why, whilst we respect our Māori rights, they're part of a range of interests that have to be taken account of as we try to reinvigorate our economy.
All right. So please tell me more, if you will, please, Minister, what safeguards you have built into the law to address these concerns. Several critics say fast-tracking may sideline those local voices and weaken environmental protections.
What we're endeavouring to do through the Fasttrack is to ensure that projects don't fall over because of what we call NIMBYism, i.e. local voices most certainly should be considered, but not to the point where it overwhelms the overarching interests of our nation. Coming out of COVID, we see our nation and our economy akin to a quiver of arrows, and every arrow has to strike a target. And with the Fasttrack and the one-stop shop legislation, there will be no shortage of opportunity for people to have their say, but it will be judged at the end of the day on development criteria and ensuring that conditions associated with energy projects, mining projects, are such that they're proportionate to the risk that's actually being managed.
Okay. So your strategy also has the stated objective of doubling mineral exports from New Zealand. What incentives would you put in place to attract global and especially Australian investment while also ensuring this responsible development of minerals?
You raise a very good point. Recently we had a large delegation of Canadian analysts and investors in New Zealand, and they basically left New Zealand saying that we probably have now the most permissive statutory regime in relation to gaining consents in respect of efficiency and clarity of purpose. So I think the fact that we've taken a risk and passed this legislation does identify us as a bit of a leading light. I mean, America itself is now toying with the idea of fast-track legislation. British Columbia is doing it. But our government did it in 2023. And that's partly to deal with the fact that we've been through an awful situation in New Zealand where a lot of natural resource decisions have been taken over by the woke intelligentsia. And the relatively small matters have been catastrophized. It's scared away investment. And it's actually left us much poorer as a country. And it's always a struggle and a risk when politicians take on those vested interests. But as the Resources Minister, I'm up for the task, and that's why I'm here at this event.
All right. So as the Resources Minister and Associate Energy Minister, how do you balance boosting the mineral and fossil fuel projects with the shift to renewables? What opportunities does New Zealand have in low carbon, low emissions technology?
Yeah. So we're very proud that our forefathers built an electricity system on the basis of hydroelectricity. And after the Second World War, we created a massive geothermal industry in New Zealand. So well beyond 85% of the electricity that we generate comes from clean green. And we were doing it before it became faddish to talk about it. The contingency fuels we use are gas, and like a lot of other countries, we're struggling to maintain reliability around gas supplies, although we are about to reinvigorate that sector. And I'm sad to say that because of the stigmatization of the coal industry, in my view a very retrograde step, we import coal from Indonesia, yet it's a perverse situation. New Zealand is blessed with a host of coal endowments. But look, the way in which society has moved, and we've had this energy policy in a lot of OECD countries has fallen victim to economic nihilism. Destroy it and ask questions later. That's not the approach of our government. Whilst we support the journey to less carbon intensive processes, we're not going to do it at the cost of fiscal solvency.
Great points, Minister. Is there perhaps anything else that we should note about mining and exploration in New Zealand before I let you go?
Oh, look, New Zealand, as I said, it's a small OECD country. It's in the southern hemisphere near Australia, and we are endeavouring to recover opportunities that were marginalised, and we're going to do it in such a way that we don't compromise the guardrails, but also respect the fact that there's too much catastrophisation going on, and there's too much weaponisation of elements of the environment, and people are doing it in order to freeze out mining. And those days are over in New Zealand. Mining is a legitimate industry, and we are in the business of reinvigorating it for jobs, export earnings, and to diversify the source of our international revenue.
All right, thank you, Minister. That was New Zealand's Minister of Resources, Shane Jones.